Well, we are getting political. Nothing can possibly go wrong from that. Because, when you're trying to get the biggest audience you can, the best way is to go political. Yeah, that can't hurt anything, ever. Mm. It's not even coffee, but it still tastes good because it's Harley. Birds of Prey was actually a good movie. I actually really did enjoy it. Hopefully, I get a chance to see it again at some point. But honestly, who has time to see all the movies that they want as many times that they want, and work and have a relationship and have their own YouTube show? And all right, difficult to complain. Okay, so here we are in the middle of 2020 presidential primary season, and I figured we should probably cover it because it's really important. It's actually more important than a lot of people give it credit for. So, yeah, let's get into that. Florida is what is known as a closed primary state, which means that you can only partake in a primary if you are registered in that party. And it's not something that you can register in that party the day of or even kind of the week before. You actually have to register a good ways a time ago. I found that out 4 years ago when there was the Hillary Bernie is kind of what it came down to for that primary, and I was unable to cast my ballot because I was some sort of third party at the time, and turns out that bit me in the butt because I showed up and I very much wanted to vote and I couldn't, and yeah, that's not very fun. So I changed my party affiliation, now registered Democrat. That way I can vote in the primary how I'd like to. Because really any of that third party stuff, they don't really have a primary. Or at least here in Florida, they didn't have any that I was able to vote in. So it kind of didn't matter as far as that. We're in a little bit of a different spot here in Florida. Now, my home state of New Hampshire actually is the first primary. The Iowa caucuses are really weird and confusing, so I don't really consider them much of a primary. But New Hampshire has the very first primary, and that means a lot to them. And now here we are in Florida, and we're a little further back. Now, Florida is an important state as far as getting delegates and votes and everything, but at the same time, it's a little different because we just had Super Tuesday, which is this voting Tuesday where there's a ton of states had all their voting at once, and it makes a big difference. When I first started looking at who I was going to select for a candidate for who I wanted to vote for, there was a significantly larger pool of candidates to choose from. And so I had to try to figure out, okay, who did I want to vote for? It's a little bit more complicated when you have a primary, and in some cases I think it's equally important for people to vote in this primary, or really any primary, than even for the general election, because you get to choose who's going to be representing what party, because even within a party, there's a big scale as far as different policies and beliefs and everything like that. By the time it hits Florida, it's really starting to look like there's only going to be 2 or 3 different possible candidates to vote for, because a lot of people have dropped out, or you look at how many candidates have gotten what votes so far, and if you pick someone on the fringe, then you've almost kind of thrown your vote away, which is weird to think about. I mean, you never really throw your vote away as long as you vote. It's important for people to vote. There's a lot of people that don't vote in the primaries because they don't feel like it's as important. There's actually a lot of the younger people who haven't voted so far. I guess on Super Tuesday, there's been only like a 13% turnout for people under the age of 30, which is insane because I think a lot of people are very politically engaged, politically motivated in a lot of their beliefs. But if you don't go out and if you don't vote, if you don't try to put the candidates with your beliefs out there, it doesn't matter, because if they don't make it to the main race, it still matters, but what you want isn't being represented. And unfortunately, I think that's starting to be the case this time around. How I wanted to decide how I was going to vote is I decided before I started really pinning down what candidate I liked from either speeches or anything like that, is I decided I wanted to be as empirical as I could with things. So I decided, okay, what issues, what things do I care most about that I would want to know people's opinions on different things. So I tried to find the different subjects that would mean quite a bit to me. And then I went through and I searched for the different beliefs for each candidate, put them into a little spreadsheet. That way I could then really look person to person. At that point, you could almost cover the names at the top and then just look down the column and say, okay, which one of these people match my beliefs most. So when I came to the things that I cared most about, the list that I ended up coming to, which is roughly ranked as far as importance for me, is LGBTQ rights, climate change, separation of religion, immigration, healthcare, whether they're pro-science or not, their military stance, ideas on prison reform, gun control, and income inequality. Some of the reasons why I put that list kind of in that order, when I think of LGBTQ rights, for me, that talks about some pretty basic human rights, some rights that, within the Democratic Party, generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of people speaking out against LGBTQ, which is great. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy that party and tend to identify with that party. Also, for me, that also kind of works in with women's rights. I feel like most candidates that support one and work towards the rights of one also kind of work towards the rights and equality of the other as well. Equal power and equal say in things. That's kind of the top. Just below that, we have climate change, and for me, that's the fate of the world. That's we are messing up the planet. 97% of climate scientists agree that not only do we have climate change, but it is because of human causes, and that it's causing all sorts of problems with the world. I mean, there's the extreme weather is happening from it, the acidity and warming of the oceans, everything from all the polar ice is melting, which is raising the sea level. And it's just contributing to this giant, massive, terrifying thing. I mean, it really is terrifying. It's going to be affecting me during my lifetime. It's going to be affecting people not that much younger than me quite a bit during their lifetime. People that are older than me are having less effect, and I feel like they're not doing their part as far as not throwing the entire planet into a giant dumpster fire. So climate change is kind of a big deal, and how we mitigate that is, again, a big deal. But at the same time, if we did everything we could to solve climate change, and we didn't advocate for the basic equal rights of LGBT and women, that feels weird and wrong to me. But they're like both neck and neck right at the top. Separation of religion. There's a lot of really terrible stuff going on in the U.S., and they're using religion as the back for a lot of it. Not only a lot of the anti-women, anti-LGBT stuff, there's a lot of Christianity being forced onto public spaces, which is really terrible. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy how the Satanic Temple has been trying to put the statue of Baphomet where they're putting statues of like the Ten Commandments over in courthouses and stuff like that. It's really a fantastic thing, and they're doing some great work, so I very much appreciate them. So yes, the separation of church and state, that's pretty high up there for me. Then you get into, immigration also kind of goes into, honestly, some basic human rights stuff for me, just because of all the detention that's happening right now, and the concentration camps that we've got here on U.S. soil, and a lot of just systemic racism that's going on through that. I'm certainly okay with having a conversation with someone about exactly how we should let people into the country, and the basic immigration process from that. But right now, the basic conversation for immigration really is about the barbaric things that we're doing to brown-skinned people, and how can we fight that? So, yeah. So I went through, and at the time, it seemed to me like there were four major candidates. I think probably at the time there were about 8 or 9 different candidates. I mean, probably even more, but some of them whose names I didn't recognize. I couldn't find any information as far as like what they believed, who they supported, and at the same time, they didn't seem to have a whole lot of support from other people. So I decided maybe not to search for them. So it came down to Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders, and Warren. Those are the four that I ended up putting their names and everything down. And then I tried to find what I could on their beliefs on everything, and some things were really difficult to search for. Unfortunately, with this kind of political, the primaries going on right now, there's so much garbage even through a Google search that it made it a little difficult to find some things, to parse it out. Plus, there's also so much garbage and political ads and everything, so it's difficult. When you find a piece of information, you kind of have to vet it through at least 2 or 3 different sources, make sure they're reputable, and it's tough and annoying. So going through here, it's also some interesting things were that each candidate, sometimes everybody agreed on the same thing. Honestly, I couldn't find any legitimate difference as far as people's beliefs on LGBTQ rights and women's rights. Everyone seems to be kind of on the same page for there, so that wasn't a huge deal. Now, also, as I go through here, please keep in mind that I did not spend like weeks and weeks researching everything. So if you're hearing some of the things that I'm saying and they seem a little wrong to you, I apologize. Again, I'm just kind of showing you my journey through how I managed to find who I would be supporting. There's a number of differences between a number of different candidates, and I almost don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of exactly what candidate supports what, because who knows if any of my research might have been a little faulty. But really, I just wanted to share with you the process of just how I went about trying to find somebody, because I feel like it's a pretty simple process. I think a lot of people tend to listen to debates, and watch the promotional commercials or articles from those candidates, which can be a decent source of information, but at the same time, I feel like you almost get locked into who might be the best speaker, who might have the most charisma, when honestly, at the end of the day, we are just looking for people that support what we feel and what we know to be true. I also think it's kind of weird and annoying, this whole argument of trying to vote for someone who's electable, voting for someone who you think is going to win, which is absolutely astounding, just amazing to me, because for the primaries, I imagine you're shooting for the person that best represents your desires and your thoughts on everything. Rather than, I don't know, trying to, it feels weird, almost like some sort of gambling game of trying to guess who's going to win, or, who might win against somebody else. There's certainly some credence to that, I'm sure, but it just feels incredibly disingenuous to not vote for which person very specifically represents your thoughts and desires. Because if you don't vote, the politicians aren't going to see what people believe. Politicians aren't going to see what people really hold true in their heart. And if they don't see what we hold true to our heart, they're not going to try to support those policies or change their mind on something they might disagree on. So go out and vote. If you're right here in Florida with me, our presidential primary date is March 17th. That's when the actual voting day for the primary is. So it looks like the Florida primary early voting is actually March 7th through the 14th. So feel free to find your polling place. Go on to the wonderful Google, find the official site to tell you where your polling place is, and go ahead and vote. Make your voice heard. Because even if the person that you vote for doesn't win the state, they can still get some delegates. Imagine if one person got 2/3 of the vote and the other person got the other third of the vote. That other person with a third is actually going to get about a third of the candidates. At least that's what I understand. So, yeah, your vote actually very much matters. And then when we come to the primary election in November, then yes, I'll probably give you another heads up as far as when the early voting is and everything. And it's important, and you need to go out and you need to vote because Donald Trump is terrible. He is a terrible human being and very clearly does not actually care about the people of the United States. Racist, misogynistic. He thinks he is the greatest person in the world. He's a blithering idiot that can barely handle his own Twitter. I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I mean, you either know he's terrible or you don't. So either way, get out. Vote this time around for who you really want in your heart of hearts. And then later on in November, vote blue. Let's get him out of here because whoever wins this election is going to decide some Supreme Court nominations, quite possibly, quite probably. And it's going to be a really big deal for human rights. Just is. It's maybe less fun and festive, but I appreciate you going on this ride with me. One last bit, of course, if you'd like to go out and see me perform a bit of magic, you're going to want to go check out the Orlando Witches and Wizards Market, hosted by Prometheus Esoterica. That is once again going to be on Saturday, March 21st. That's actually coming right up. I'm going to be part of the Wizards Duel. That is at Hourglass Brewing in Longwood, Florida. So yes, the second annual Wizards Duel will be there. I will be putting my name into the Goblet of Fire. We'll cross our fingers and see what we can achieve this year. I am excited and nervous. So, as always, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button there at the bottom of the YouTube. Check me out on Facebook at Rich Does a Thing. Rich Does a Thing on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the Tumblr, on the, I guess, TikTok, on pretty much any social media application that you can find. We are there. So, thanks for coming out with us, and until next time... Still can't think of anything. Maybe next time. Toodles.